Yo, what's going on, guys? We're back here with another episode of Around the Beat, HoopsHype show that gives you the pulse of every team. This week, we're doing the Miami Heat. We're joined by ClutchPoints editor and Miami Heat beat writer Zach Weinberger. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Obviously, we're heading to that home stretch, final couple games here. It should be exciting. We'll see. We'll talk about it. But yeah, I know we're getting into that really intense point of the season.
Yeah, and I'm very fortunate to have spent the last year and a half being able to watch those games with you in Miami. And I think this is a team that is the definition of misunderstood because everyone knows them as the new play-in purgatory team, and all the situation with Jimmy Butler last year. This year, the Bam Adebayo game probably is what we would say is like the big thing that everyone thinks about. But there's been so many highs and lows for this year with the new offense, with Norm Powell looking great and being a first-time All-Star, while a low being Tyler Herro missing almost the entirety of the year. How would you gauge this season in contrast to the last few? Obviously, we'll say last year was an outlier with the whole Jimmy situation that kind of just muddled everything, and it just seemed like everyone was just kind of like mentally exhausted by the end. How would you compare basically this year to all the other years?
I mean, I would just say the word and phrase that just comes to mind to me is just it's extreme disappointment. Listen, I mean, this is the fourth straight year that they're locked into the play-in. Okay, they don't want to do that. Obviously, that first year where they were in the play-in, 2023, they made the finals, right? But it's just a little different this time around. It's the fourth straight year. This culture, this organization is based on their winning ways. And I mean, yeah, they're scraping by and getting to the playoffs, but they don't want to do that, right? So it's been extremely disappointing, especially because this roster you think would have actually at least possibly got that sixth seed, if not at least a high play-in seed, but at least the sixth seed to kind of avoid the play-in tournament and see how they do in that first round. Now it's the same thing where they're the 10th seed, which is worse than the eighth that they've been. And it's basically kind of similar to what they were last year. And again, like you mentioned, that sort of Jimmy Butler outlier thing was really real with them. Even Pat Riley and Erik Spoelstra and the players admitted it that had some sort of effect on them. You can't have that excuse now. I mean, listen, the offense was great to start, then it's been kind of dropping off. The defense has been a very interesting drop off for me. And that's usually what they kind of hang their hats on. But it's been extremely disappointing and very head scratching. Again, the injuries, like you mentioned, and we'll talk about that, I guess. But yeah, no, it's just been, there's no doubt, disappointment. And this is not even being a hot take. How can you not be disappointed a fourth straight year in the play-in tournament?
I think you hit it right there. It is a weird thing in terms of the injuries this year because I think also minutes this year. I know Eric, somebody's always going to make adjustments. It's game by game who's going out there. And I don't think anybody is taking it to heart, especially you're playing for the Heat, because, there'll be a stretch where Simone Fontecchio is getting a bunch of minutes. Then there'll be a stretch where it'll feel like they're going to Jaime and Jovic. To you, what do you think's, I mean, this roster, we haven't really been able to see them fully together. And we talked about this with the whole Norm. Tyler, do you have one come off the bench? Do you have one start? What do you think's been the biggest chemistry restriction besides health? Do you think it's the new system, or do you think it's just not having enough runway to get these guys together in a new system?
I think it's the latter. I also just think that these pieces, and again, it could be because of the health, it could be because of the time there, but these pieces are not gelling together. And obviously, that Tyler Norm sort of tandem has been kind of the forefront of people talking about the failures of this season. The thing is that they've been together on the court for like roughly, I want to say 15 games. Obviously, Tyler's missed 48 total games this year, and then Norm has been 20 so plus. So, I mean, again, it's just hard to sort of like come up with these lineups and rotations so that you can kind of throw them out on the floor and they succeed, but they just kind of look so rough together. And when you have 3 games left in the season, you're still experiencing that. It just also, again, like this roster has looked so uh, kind of dreadful against these teams like Toronto and Boston and these other teams in the East because their size and their 3-point shooting and all these other things where they just look outmatched. So to me, it's like there's this uncomfortable sort of discussion you have to have about this roster and how are you supposed to address it. Obviously, listen, the Giannis thing is on the table. That's obviously going to be a storyline, but there needs to be some sort of realization from the front office about how they can compete in the future. And to me, again, health is always the thing. It's been a problem the past like 3 or 4 seasons, but you can't use that as an excuse again. I mean, when they're on the floor, it looks a little rough. It's up and down. It's tumultuous. It's convoluted. So yeah, health has a lot to do with it. I just don't know if the attributes and the strengths of these players fit together.
That's a good way of putting it. Definitely saying, and this is something you and I always talk about. I don't want to say it's a hodgepodge roster because that's the Sacramento Kings. It's not like it's thrown together hastily. Right. Yeah. It's weird because Sam was going to bring up right here, talk about Jaime Jaquez being a six man. And I know that's what he's going to say, but Sam, what's your take on when you look out of, because I feel like him and I, we know what these players are, but what's your thoughts from Jaquez to the rest of the roster when you look at it that maybe is it as weird fitting as maybe some people might think?
I don't know if it's I don't follow the team like day to day and stuff, but it seems like they're still playing around rotations. Like their guys are starting differently. Like Fontecchio now Jovic is out of the roster, out of the rotation for a while. So it's kind of I don't know if it's that is because I think a lot of the Heat defense relies on team defense, not really like individual. I guess they had like Davion Mitchell and stuff, but like when you have guys coming in and out of rotation, it's hard to kind of communication-wise on defense, right? It's like Bam's on watching over, communicating with everyone. I mean, you guys got different guys like Pelly Larson's coming in, and you got Fontecchio sometimes. It's just tough for them to form like a defensive identity, I guess. Like this team sometimes gives up like 150s, 130s, 140s, like every night. Like just looking at the box score, I'm like, what happened to Heat? Like what happened to Miami Heat? They used to be like the team that prided themselves on defense. And I know, and even like Norm Powell, right? Like I think recently Spo or someone was saying like, oh, like we need more from defensive leaders. I don't know. Was that something that happened like recently? I think. So it's just kind of interesting watching from afar, just from a team that prided themselves, like when Jimmy was there, prided himself on defense, and now to where they are, they just kind of like this year, right? They're playing a lot more up tempo now, so that probably has something to do with there's more possessions now. The pace is faster, so obviously there's going to be the other team's going to score more points. But I don't know, like when you watch them, they give up a lot of layups and some open threes and things like that. It's just you look at them, it's like they do look like a playing team right now.
They're ranked 11th in defensive rating. Ironically, though, they're like not a bad defensive team.
What's the net rating though?
13th in the league, and granted, they do give up the 8th most points while they score the 2nd most.
That's crazy. It's kind of like the Mavs with Donnie Nelson back in the day, or like Doug Moe with the Nuggets. Like this version of it. It just doesn't seem very Spo-like, I guess you'd say, or Pat Riley-like.
Yeah. What's your thoughts, Zach, on that? I want to.
It's just that the defensive rating, like you mentioned, is like again early in the season, halfway point of the season. This was a top 10 defense. Like they were on the borderline top 5. Like this was a team that again the defense is going to be good if the offense fails. That's kind of been this team for the past couple seasons when Jimmy was there, the final couple seasons. This time around, again, this final stretch, the final quarter of the season has been so, like he said, so uncharacter-like. I mean, again, it's just been giving up 150 points, or like you're seeing, again, it's been too much that I've been having to tweet like the Heat are close to breaking the franchise record for most points allowed. Like it's been happening quite a bit. So you just have to wonder what's going on. But again, like I said, I just think this team is so outmatched compared to these other sort of like organizations in the conference. You looked at the Toronto game, you look at the Cleveland, Boston. I mean, Boston, it's like I don't even think necessarily the Heat played bad in that game. It's just Boston's way better than them. I mean, that's just kind of how it is. I mean, they've won a few against Detroit and New York, but you look at that and there has to be some sort of realization that has to be hit with this front office about how this team is constructed. again, I think the defense will kind of round itself out. We'll see how they play in the play-in tournament, but like the Heat is the one team I think in the play-in that has been trending downwards, and everybody else has been trending upwards. So they're really heading into a not a great point here. So if they could finish out strong, we'll see how they are. But again, the defense has been the most surprising thing. The offense, I would imagine it's up and down. But like you said, they averaged the second most points per games, but again, the offensive rating is kind of middle of the pack. It's just because of those extra possessions, and sometimes they're fumbling those extra possessions. So this is a very peculiar team. Because to start, they were kind of fun to watch, and then now it's been kind of like so and back to what they were in this mediocrity kind of level. We'll see how they finish off the season, but they're in a weird place right now.
Yeah, I think they're kind of like what the old saying, between a rock and a hard place, in the sense that the roster, they have 7 dudes scoring double digits, or at least 6. They also, if you just list off the roster, it is not a bad roster. All right. You have 3 all-stars, arguably, in Tyler Herro, Bam Adebayo. I know Tyler's been injured. And Norm Powell now. And then you just have, you have 8 to 9 guys that are playable. The rule, obviously, we talk about this, the rule of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. They changed the offense this year through the season, and I know they haven't been healthy. What do you think, this year? You said they're trending downwards. Is this year even worth, what do you think is even the mission this year? Are you trying to be the underdogs? Because it almost felt like ever since this 83-point game, instead of that being the galvanizing momentum mover towards that's being a 6th seed or something, it's almost muddled or conflicted things for them, because it feels like it's almost became I don't want to say distraction, but more noise than there should be.
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like that the whole sort of they want to be the underdogs. It's at some point, man, that has to be a little tiresome. You know what I'm saying? Again, I know they're built on being gritty and tough, as they should. I mean, I think that should be part of the identity, but winning's pretty cool too. I think that should be part of the identity. And again, I kind of wrote a couple columns on this kind of throughout the season, especially after the trade deadline. This team needs another alpha. I think that's kind of what's missing. And obviously, I mean, Giannis fits the bill. But if you don't get Giannis, how are you selling this team in a 5th season where you could be a playing team again? I just don't know how you sell it. Again, it seems like that the excuse has been the health. I think it's a legitimate excuse. I just don't know how you can sell that for another season after 4 straight seasons of being locked in the play-in. So it's interesting. You would think that the status of Norman Powell and Tyler Herro, that's going to be a huge thing going into the offseason, and other these things. So I just don't know. Again, they were the first 10 seed. Again, the play-in tournament has been around for several years now, but they're the first 10 seed to kind of get out of the play-in and into the playoffs. They probably will have to do that again. I think they're going to stay at 10. Again, we'll see. But they're just making it harder for themselves. And I guess they feed off that. But again, this team should not be sort of they really play when they really have to. That's not the Heat way. That's not the Heat culture. They did that sort of court thing a couple years ago. People flamed them for, right? The hardest working, whatever. You got to be that every single night. You can't just be that on the night where you have the most pressure. So I think there needs to be some sort of reality check. And again, this team I know wants to win. It's not like the effort is not there. It's just, again, I think it's really just they're outmatched to a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference. We'll see if they, prove me wrong. But they're in a weird place.
Yeah, no, definitely it is a weird place. Sam, you were going to ask something?
Yeah, I was wondering, you just spoke about Giannis. Do you feel like they're going to get Giannis this summer? How percentage-wise, what do you think, their chances are with that?
Oh, man. So I think, for me anyways, to me, this is a different situation than, with Dame, with KD last offseason, with the other guys they've had a chance to get. I in some ways, I think that this is, whether it happens or not, it's like a momentum shifting thing for the Heat because they have a lot of hard decisions to make. I think they kind of actually have a good chance of getting him. I'm definitely over that 50% mark personally, just because, first of all, as the reports say, that was the biggest offer they were seriously considering before the trade deadline. Herro, Kel'el Ware, some other players, first round picks, first round swaps. They have more tradable first round picks in the summer. I think that with the players involved, I think that could get it done. Now, there's going to be teams like Golden State where those more tradable first round picks could be a little more valuable because post Curry Warriors they could be bad. So we'll see. But I think in terms of a complete package, if they want players, young prospects, and first round picks and whatever, I think the Heat is the best team around. We'll see what other teams throw at them. So I think it's a pretty good chance. Now we'll see if that's naive of me, but I at this point in time, April 9th, I think they actually do. So, and I think if you pair him with Bam, with a Norman Powell, one of either Norm or Tyler, I think Tyler will be in the deal if that happens. Norman, Davion Mitchell, Andrew Wiggins, if you keep him. I think that's a pretty good starting lineup. It just depends on how the bench looks, but I think you have to get Giannis and worry about the rest later. I think they have a good chance. I'm giving it over 50%. I'm more on the positive side there. We'll see though. Again, the Heat have struck out on these players, but I think the pressure is on. I think after now 4 straight seasons of the play-in, you got to get a whale. And I think there's been 3 players reportedly that Pat Riley will go all in for. Giannis is one of them. Donovan Mitchell and Anthony Edwards. That was the reported 3. Giannis has to be there. He's a top player ever. So, yeah, to me it's a good chance.
Definitely, I think Giannis is the one that's most gettable out of those twos, and unless like something massively goes wrong for Cleveland in the first round and Donovan just wants out. And also Donovan's just getting older, so it just like kind of like closes that window. We talked about this in the past. Pat Riley likes the bargain bin. If you look at a lot of the trades over the years, the Norman Powell trade, Davion Mitchell, they love other people's junk. Not even junk. I don't want to say it's junk. Like they want other people's discarded goods or like players that either contract extension is coming up or they have too many players at that time and they are willing to, find players that normally wouldn't be moved at a discounted rate because of whatever situation they're in. And that's where we also talk about Jaime Jaquez becoming extension eligible. The poison pill for Nikola Jovic expires when the offseason starts, so he doesn't have a trade kicker when he gets traded. And you've mentioned Norman Powell, Tyler Herro. Do you think there's a world where they do look for other guys that, maybe aren't being mentioned now, but could be available? Like Zion Williamson, if he's ever traded, this is going to be the best time for them to sell high on him because he just played the healthiest season of his career. There's Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson in Portland that could be on the move. There's plenty of other guys around the league that we could just list that maybe you do the second draft thing where they're on going into the 4th season and you take a swing on them, or they're on the last or second to last year of a deal about to be extension eligible, similar to Norman, that they could end up getting a good player on a discounted rate. What's your thoughts on that? And do you see them having to make a move regardless if it's not for a Giannis, Donovan, or a Anthony Edwards, which that's not going to happen?
Yeah, again, mentioning like Donovan Mitchell and Anthony Edwards, that won't happen. It's just that's the 3 players that Pat Riley would go all in for. They're gonna make a move regardless, I think. And you mentioned a big name there, Zion. That's one of the names that I'm thinking of as well. I think they would go after that. I just think personally that they have to be realistic because if Zion is a good player when healthy, they always deal with players that are very injury prone. Again, Giannis is to me is a different thing. He's been injury prone in the past, but he's obviously a different animal. Like they've dealt with Jimmy. They didn't give him the extension at that point because of the injuries concerns, and he was getting older. They're dealing now with Tyler. So the only way that they would go for Zion if it's for cheap. Now we'll see if that comes through. Like you mentioned at the end there, I think they're going to go for a move regardless. If they strike out on Giannis, they're going to have to make these moves, especially for those players that you mentioned. I think the discarded goods thing, again, they've been doing good at taking teams sort of discarded goods, like you said, and making it into like diamonds in the rough. They've done that in the past. Now, is that going to equate to competing, getting out of the first round of the playoffs? That's another conversation, but they're going to be making these moves. I think it's going to be a pretty active offseason for them, regardless of whatever happens. So I think that kind of route is likely for this team. And again, like you have to do something. How can you can't sell this team next year and say, well, it was injuries holding us back. There's no way that you can really stop that from happening. That's just how the game goes. You get injured. It's been a little rougher for the Heat, but still, like, you got to do something. I mean, Pat Riley said it, in his last end of season press conference. He's like, we're not going to rib it, meaning they're not going to run it back. I would imagine he's not going to do the same thing as well. I mean, again, you brought in Powell. That was kind of it. I mean, Fontecchio and other players, but you got to take some big swings here, I think. And obviously, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I think you said it best. They're not going to run it back. What is the expectations for you at this point? They're stuck in the play-in, and there was a point it seemed like either them, the Hawks, the Hornets, one of them was going to be able to sneak out of it. As you said earlier, the Heat were the ones who faltered and weren't able to get out of the play-in and rather put themselves in a similar situation to the Golden State Warriors were in and just locking themselves into that, second or the 2-game series, it seems like. So what is the goal? Is it like strong finish, like get it into the playoffs, play 2 games to get down there, be the 8th seed, and maybe give someone a run for their money? What are your thoughts there? Like, what is a good finish to this year?
It's basically what you said. I mean, here's the thing. Like, I think I wrote, this might have been a week or 2 ago, just kind of like the Heat dream scenarios for the postseason. And I said, like, getting the 8th seed to me, like, out of all the matchups in the playoffs, I don't want the Celtics. I don't want the Cavs. But I'd rather have the Pistons than the Celtics. If there's one team that the Heat have played well against at the top team, it's the Detroit Pistons. They beat them a couple times this year, and they played very well against them. So, like, that's the matchup that I want to see. I don't think they're going to win the series, but I think they could take a game or 2, maybe 2. I think that's how you do it, because you look at last season and there was some momentum when they were, the 10th seed. They're the first 10th seed to get out of the play-in. But you have the Cavaliers, and they got demolished. It wasn't just a regular sweep. They got absolutely dominated. Those last 2 games in Miami, they lost by like 30, 40, 50, closing in on 50, I think, or maybe just 50. And that was demoralizing. So what's a good way for this team realistically to finish? It's getting out of the play-in, and it's giving the Pistons a run for their money if they fall in that 8th seed. Again, like, I think the NBA released something, the probabilities, where, like, they could still get the 8th for the play-in. The 7th is out of the picture, but they can get the 8th. Still, we'll see what happens. But they're not in control of their own destiny anymore. So it's getting that 8th seed, it's getting the Pistons, and it's maybe getting a game or 2, and you know what? You can hang your hat on that, and then next season, we'll see what happens. But you have to get some wins here in the playoffs. That's, for me, would be an okay finish to the season.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the Pistons are probably the best matchup. Sam?
Yeah, Zach, what are your thoughts about Erik Spoelstra and Kel'el Ware's relationship? Like, we keep hearing about a lot. It reminds me kind of like the Steve Kerr and Kuminga thing, like, where he just kind of like won't give him minutes, and then like I know Kel'el says like the right things with media and stuff. He just kind of takes the high road and doesn't like criticize anyone, but I can tell by his body language like he doesn't like it. Like he's like kind of like, I know the fans and even some of the media are like what's going on there? Like he seems like he's in a way, like riding him a little too hard. Like, like
Yeah, no,
like
again, there's no doubt the whole coaching staff rides him hard. Assistant coach Malik Willis, Caron Butler. I mean, to me, I think it's because they see that he could be a really foundational piece for the Heat. However, I think that we were talking about how to me, the Heat are outmatched against a lot of these teams because of size. Kel'el Ware is kind of the solution, and he doesn't run it. So I think it's kind of like I'm very involved in seeing how Heat Twitter reacts to this sort of storyline. Unfortunately, because Heat Twitter could be a war zone out there. But I think like when you talk about that relationship, I think it's built on respect. I think it's built on this sort of old school mentality of like, we're going to challenge him hard and we're going to do this. Now, whether that translates to the current NBA, I think people have this sort of discussion about Pat Riley and Spoelstra having this old school mentality. I think it's made, to me, I think it's made Kel'el better. I mean, again, it's been tumultuous in the second season. But again, like, I think to see it from the coach's perspective, there's been times where Kel'el has been pretty disappointing this year, whether it's the motor, whether it's the effort. And you have games where he can be the best player on the floor, record the best plus minus on the floor. He gets 6 blocks at halftime. I mean, you can just see the effort. It's very noticeable. So I think going into that third season, you want that every night. Well, this depends, obviously, if he's in the Giannis deal. But I do think that the coaching staff sees a lot in Kel'el, and there's no doubt that Bam is one of the biggest supporters in the locker room. They were writing Bam when he started, and Bam always talks about that. So he's like, "Yep, they're giving him that treatment." So I think it's like he's the Kuminga thing is interesting. I don't know if it's as bad as that was. It seemed like they were totally off of different mindsets. I think there's a mindset where Kel'el's like, I think he understands it. The one time that Kel'el's comments was very interesting is when Spo said the thing and he walked back this. But Spo was like, sometimes young players can kind of like throw their performances to get more minutes, extended minutes. And I think Kel'el was like, that was kind of crazy, but whatever minutes I can get. So that was the one time where I think it was interesting. But other than that, listen, I think it's just challenging him, and I think it's kind of that old school coach mentality. That's me personally. But again, like there's been times when he's looked bad, especially last postseason. Hopefully this postseason, these final 3 games, it could be a little bit of a turnaround here.
And I think the other thing with Kel'el is he has a very nonchalant, like it's not stoic, because like stoic I feel like is kind of maybe more, man, like I feel like Jokic comes off more stoic in the sense that like it gives off more like the cerebral like processing that you think they're like thinking very long. It's not like I'm saying that Kel'el's not thinking. It's more that he's just nonchalant. Like it's sometimes I think the reason why fans might interpret it, and maybe they think like the Heat organization is being hard on it, is just because it's hard to get a reaction out of him. Like I think I've seen him like chuckle or laugh out of something like that, just like interaction. Like it's not like he's it's just like a very slight smile. It's almost like a dry laugh, if that's it. But like he's like genuine. It seems like he's genuinely, laughing. So I think that's the other thing that gets across is like he's not someone who wears his emotions on his sleeve.
He seems really chill. Is that what he kind of is?
For sure. No,
very chill.
Very. And maybe to the coaching staff, it's like you're being too chill. We need some more energy out of you. And you see how Bam and everybody kind of teases him. The biggest reaction I feel like we got on the floor is like when Bam dunked on him that one time, and that was kind of the one time you saw him really laugh, and you can see that sort of interaction. But again, like I think there's just I think Kel'el has the mindset where he's like, listen, like I truly don't think it's like the media answer for him to say it. I think it's true that he feels that way, where it's like the coaches want the best out of him, so they're gonna ride him. Now it's gonna be a tough journey to kind of get to those consistent extended minutes, but we've been seeing it more consistent now. So again, we'll see what happens. And listen, maybe he won't be here that much longer. I don't know, but I think he has a lot of talent, you know, and I think that the coaching staff feels that way too. So, yeah, it's a weird discussion.
And I agree with what you said earlier. I don't think at all it's a Jonathan Kuminga's situation. And Kel'el had a rough time at Oregon. Then he goes to Indiana. Who's his coach? Mike Woodson. Talk about an old school coach, okay? And he basically went from being a guy who, when coming out, I think it was like the number one recruit or one of the top recruits, killed his draft stock, goes to Oregon and becomes the first round. I mean, goes to Indiana from Oregon, becomes the first round pick under an old school minded coach. So I think this is the type of coaching he responds to. And again, I just think it's also most people don't hear or see a coach's relationship or interactions like I think Spo does with his players. So it's a lot more public accountability than other coaches would do.
I just want to add with Mike Woodson. I remember asking Kel'el Ware at the combine about playing for Mike Woodson, and he actually gave I don't remember exactly what he said, but he was very positive about what Woodson did. I think he's something in terms of he kind of turned my collegiate career around from Oregon to Indiana. So that's some food for thought, I guess.
No, again, just real quick. Again, I think that's kind of how it's going to be with Spo. I think down the line he's going to reflect on that, and again, how he feels. Again, like Bam has been open about how he was coached by Spo his first couple seasons. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there was definitely not a whole 100% positive reaction, but obviously you see their relationship now. I would think that Bam is one of Spo's favorite players he's coached. I mean, just because of the leadership and the drive and everything like that. So I think they're using that on Kel'el, and like you said, Mike Woodson was like that. So the positive reaction there, I think it's going to be the same with Spo. So, but we'll see down the line. But yeah, no, that's going to continue to be a storyline. There's no doubt about that.
Talking about continued storylines, and this is one that it makes sense, but it doesn't really all the time make sense. Now, Tyler Herro, over the last few seasons, especially since he signed that contract, he's been a guy that's been the trade bait for any big deal the Heat have been intertwined with. And now this offseason, the extension's coming up. I think everyone's in agreement that if he were to get to a max contract, it kind of would look like a Bradley Beal, Zach LaVine situation where he'd have to play at a certain level to make that contract worth it. But you and I had a discussion. I've had a discussion with other people that I think he knows what his worth is, not his worth, but what contract is realistic for him. And it's still probably 30 million or something around that realm. What is with Tyler constantly being in the trade rumors? And do you think he's obviously they're aware of it, but do you think that's part of the reason why it sometimes feels like it's not that he's never too comfortable, but it almost feels like Bam has asserted himself as the leader, but it almost feels like Tyler has too, and he does that. But it almost feels like he kind of knows that there's a chance that he's not I don't know, it's a different type of maybe it's just a hierarchy. But do you think that that's something that in Herro's circle, because he also talks about he's aware of what everyone's saying. He acknowledges he knows what's going on online. So what are your thoughts on that and Tyler and his whole situation?
Okay.
What'd you last hear from me?
I heard Tyler Herro, and now he's trade bait, and how he could be kind of reacting towards that, and kind of the thoughts there. I think, right?
Yeah. He's made it clear that he's aware of everything being said about him. So, what do you think of just the whole Tyler Herro situation? And do you think it's it's dragged on him?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's almost this acceptance in a way. He always talks about how he sees the rumors. Like you mentioned, he's very aware of kind of the talk about him. I remember speaking to him on the side a couple of times about certain stuff that's kind of floating around on social media. He knows what's going on. He knows the rumors. Again, I think there's an acceptance there, but there's also an acceptance where listen, he's been on this team for I think it's his 7th season. And like Bam said, obviously when he's the leader and he's speaking about what needs to happen, people listen. But when it's those two, it moves a room. We kind of saw that like that halftime, sort of a couple games ago at home. They were like that halftime was like I think Jaime was like that's the best halftime that the Heat have had since I've been here. Like when those two speak up, it moves a room. So I think there's an acceptance. I don't think there's kind of like this reluctance to be like, okay, I'm going to make my presence known. I think that's already been kind of cemented. I think he knows. It's kind of the thing that every player has to kind of realize, right? That this is obviously a business at the end of the day. And Tyler's kind of the top player that they would be okay with trading for a top star. Bam seems to be the untouchable. I kind of agree in a way because I think he can fit with a lot of other alpha players if you get them. Tyler's the one player where he can give a team a lot of value. Now, like you mentioned, he's up for an extension. And again, maybe surprisingly to some people, I think he's pretty accepting of like of how realistic a contract would look with him. We'll see what happens, but I think like there's an acceptance from him in being in these rumors. It's just kind of part of the process. It's a part of being a good player in this league, really. So that's just kind of what it is with him.
That's a great way of putting it. Just if you're good, people want you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious about like you've covered the team for a number of years now, and like you've seen Erik Spoelstra throughout, and he's been known as I would say the backbone of Heat culture in a way, like super, like it's our way or the highway in a way, right? Kind of strict, and then I don't like with the Bam 83, right? Like the way he got it, fouling up so much, like that doesn't seem very Heat culture in a way, like. Some people would argue, like, do you with Spoelstra, like, do you feel like he's kind of getting a little bit more laid back over the years, just in terms of how the NBA is getting more like power player empowerment? Like, do you feel he's kind of catering more to what the players want, preference wise?
Those were real fouls, by the way. They weren't okay, like that was a legit 83 points.
But the discourse online.
Yes. Yep.
Those were real fouls, by the way. Also, no, there was a couple points where they intentionally fouled the Wizards so whatever. But I think that there's some validity to the Spo point about being laid back. I don't know how laid back. I still think he's one of the toughest coaches in the league. I still think that, and players will always say that. But I think, as the years go by, I think that sort of player empowerment type of thing has been sort of this reality with that just kind of, that's up to people. I think, but the thing's a reality to get this record, like I think that he was going to let him do it, so that's kind of the thought process here. I don't think there would have been like, okay, we're going to bench him with 70 points and 9 minutes to go because, we don't want him to pass Kobe. I don't think that's like a thought in their heads. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, but I do think that, there's been more of this kind of player empowerment from Spo, but I think that's kind of the rest of the league, right? So, but I still think that there's like that balance with him though, where like he's still going to like, grill Kel'el and do kind of like that sort of process. But like, if there's a chance to get a record, like he's always been talked about, maybe like Kel'el could have gotten 10 blocks to get a triple-double that way. So I think there is some validity to that.
Yeah, no, I definitely think I just also think like as you get older, I feel like it's like being a parent. You're the first kid, you're strict and you have all these rules, and then by the third kid you're super lenient and you just don't care. All right, Zach, we wanted to ask you about Jaime Jaquez. He's one of the candidates for Sixth Man of the Year. Talk about his development, and he's kind of like the complete antithesis of what like the Heat offense is for a team that's all like taking a bunch of threes. This is a guy who paint touches, attacking the rim.
No, absolutely. Again, like that first season was very impressive. I think it helped, besides his strengths, being with Jimmy Butler that 1 year and seeing how Jimmy Butler uses his strength and his physicality, get to the paint, get the advantage of the defender, either draw a foul or use his physicality to get a bucket. That was Jaime, and he had an impressive rookie season. Then they started to do a transition in that second year. He had a sophomore slump. He was trying to be this knockdown three-point shooter. He was really adding that to his sort of repertoire. It just wasn't working, and you kind of saw that sophomore slump. I spoke to Jaime a lot in the offseason, and especially during training camp, one-on-ones and stuff like that. And he talked about sort of the mental approach. The one thing that he mentioned that I thought was pretty eye-opening, and I thought that, I wonder how much of a lot of players do this. He got a mental coach. Besides addressing, physically and what he needs to do on the court, he got a mental coach, and it really straightened himself out to sort of know what he wants to do on the court, on and off the court. And he kind of got away from the three-point shot. He's still taking some, but it's not how much it was in that second season. And like you mentioned, he's the sixth man right off the bench. He gives him those paint touches. But I think it's an antithesis to what they've done. But for this sort of high-powered or high-tempo offense, it's creating those extra possessions. Right when the other team either misses a basket or they make a basket, the ball goes to Jaime when he's on the floor and he charges to the rim. And if there's an open guy, he'll pass out. His assistant numbers have been up, or he'll take advantage and he'll see what he does in the paint. It's been very good this year. I mean, he's obviously the year. We'll see if he gets it. But there's a lot of other good players. But the fact that he's in contention is really indicative of the work that he's put in this offseason. He knows what he knows his strengths. They're doing that. He doesn't need to be the best three-point shooter. They'll put people around him to do so. But he knows what he needs to do for this team, and the value is high for him. And he's up for the moment. So basketball runs in that family, as we saw, obviously for the women's game, UCLA, Gabriela Jaquez. And it's worked out for him in his third season. We'll see if that continues up. Again, like that first season, teams were sort of scouting him and they found ways to stop him. This third season, there's been some pushback from Jaquez and how teams are scouting him. So it's been a good development in that third season. We'll see how he does in his fourth season and whatever happens with him. But, there's no doubt that besides physically, mentally, he's really improved. And to me, that's very important to note.
Yeah, definitely. He has improved drastically. One thing before we get out of here, if you have to say one thing you feel like is a definitive thing for fans to look out for, what would it be?
It's the cop-out answer, but it's the Giannis thing. It's the offseason. The fans have dealt with 2 or 3 seasons of these sort of missed opportunities with star players. Damian Lillard, obviously after that finals run, KD this last offseason, which again, like those deals, especially the KD deal, they could have maybe put more in, and they've held off something. Like, for example, Kel'el Ware was the big thing for the KD deal. For Giannis, it's not going to be like that. I don't think so. Like I mentioned, like there's only a couple players that Pat Riley would go in for, or really the Heat front office, Nick Harrison, whatever. Nick Harrison. And and Giannis, one of those guys. So I think that fans should look forward to that. To me, that's in some ways one of the few things, just because. But again, like if they don't get Giannis, look forward to make those deals that we were talking about. Maybe they'll go for a Zion and these other players that they could add to and see if they can make some noise. But it's really that Giannis thing. Like, I know it's the easy answer, but that's what it is. This is a team-defining move that could be made that could really save the future of this team. So, to me, it's that. And to me, it's just to see how – but it's also the improvements of these young players. I've liked what we've seen from Kasper Jakusionis. And Kel'el Ware in his second year. And we just talked about Jaime. These young guys that are improving, that's at least the one thing you can take away from a season like this. So it's the young players and it's the pursuit of Giannis that I think people got to be really excited for. To me, that's the few bright sides coming out of the season, depending on how, the play-in tournament and the postseason goes.
Completely, especially if they do land Giannis. Everyone's going to say, oh, this was worth it.
Yeah.
Zach, where can the people find you link-wise and work-wise? Those will all be in the description. But if you want to shout them out right now.
Yeah, so again, ClutchPoints.com. You'll see the full coverage from me there every single day, especially throughout, tonight against the Raptors and against Washington later, and then of course the final regular season game on Sunday. We'll see what happens in the play-in tournament. If they finish 10th, then it'll be on the road. We'll see what happens. But of course, ClutchPoints.com, the Miami Heat page, you'll find me. Twitter, X, Zach Weinberger, Zach with an H, Weinberger. It's hard to spell, I know. And then Facebook, Instagram, the same way. So you just find me there. It's going to be an interesting finish to the season, no doubt.
Definitely. And we really appreciate you for coming on at the end of the season and giving us a little preview of what to expect over the next few months. Hey, man, enjoy the game tonight, and I'll be seeing you Sunday.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, Zach.
Thank you. Take care.